married very young. So I was like 21 when I got married. I was married very, very young, and we're talking about identity. I didn't know who I was. So at that time in my life, I was basically trying to latch on to who would want me and accept me, and I didn't even know who I was.
Innovate your life, it's now or never. Innovation versus extinction, strive to be better. Rise with each challenge, seize every day. Grow, evolve, there's no other way. Push the limits, explore the new.
Manuela Smith is a woman who understands the power of faith, perseverance, and self-expression. She has learned that life doesn't always go as planned, but every obstacle is an opportunity to grow and conquer. Whether she's ensuring security as a dispatcher and a protection officer, or expressing her creativity through photography, she brings passion and authenticity to everything she does. She's tough on the outside, soft on the inside, and always finding new ways to turn challenges into stepping stones. For Manuela, life is about showing up, embracing the journey, and proving that no matter what comes your way, you have what it takes to win.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Innovate Your Life Podcast. If you haven't yet, please subscribe so you and turn on your notifications so you don't miss an episode that we drop. The young lady that I have here today that you just heard about is special to me because we've been knowing each other for over 15 years. And when I started thinking of the topic that I wanted to talk about, she was the first person that came to mind. And that's none other than my female best friend, Miss Manuela Smith. Welcome.
Hello.
How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing great. It's kind of surreal us sitting here now because I know we talk, all the time about like how we started 15 years ago in church and all of that, and just seeing like how we have morphed and evolved over time is just a testament of how good God is and how faithful He is, and just life is good.
Yeah.
Life is good.
It's lifing, but in a good way.
Right, absolutely. And so when I just started thinking about some of the conversations that we have almost on a weekly basis, one of the topics that always come up is kind of about identity and how it begins to change and morph over time. Mm-hmm. Because since we've been knowing each other, because I'm only 32, so I've literally been knowing her for almost over half of my life. And so it's like we've talked about from when a lot have changed, from me being single to being married to us being more active in church to you getting divorced. Like it was a whole lot of things that has changed throughout that time. But one of the things that I first remember when I met you is you used to wear all of these extravagant threads and patterns and fabrics. Yeah. And it's because after I learned more about you was telling me that your dad was Indian. So he used to wear a lot of different type of clothing. Yeah. And all of that type of things. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my dad and my mom met when they were younger. My dad was in the military, and then my mom was just, a girl that was just going to the store. So they met. They fell in love instantly. So, back in the days, you fall in love like instantly in 5 minutes. You see somebody walk by you like, yeah, that's who I want. So they met. I don't know a lot of history about, what transpired after that, but I know I was born. So
that's how we're here today.
Yes, and that's how we're here today. I was born. And then, so life in the home was just kind of like, my dad was more kind of like put a lot into me because I guess he was expecting for me to be a boy, but being a girl. So he put a lot of the stuff that he was doing on me, like, music and drums and piano and all that kind of stuff. So life at home was kind of chaotic when it comes to that. And I don't remember much of it because he passed away when I was 4. So I didn't really get to spend much time with him, but the little things that I can remember, he was in the military. So I remember him being gone, and I remember when he would come home, because when he would come home, he was always coming in with drum sets and guitars and piano and things like that. And so those are the little fond memories that I took away from him. And then when he passed away, I also remember, the funeral. And I remember the last time when I went to the hospital to see him, and that was the last time that I ever saw him. So and then my sister was born, right before he passed away. So it was just kind of like, it's just that 4-year time. Those are the fond memories that I remember of him, going to church and acting out and getting the whoopings when I got home. But, that was it.
It's funny that he was so musically inclined, but you are the most offbeat person that I've known.
Okay. Yeah.
And I can say that here on camera just because we talk about it all the time.
Right.
But I take that back. She used to be the most offbeat, but now she's actually dancing in the ministry. So you've gotten a lot better, and I'm proud of you to say that.
I still can't play the piano, but however, my son knows how to play very well, and I'm just like, okay, I guess it skipped me and went to him. So yeah.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I also liked about your story when I first met you is the fact that your mother is African.
Yes.
And so I'm like, when I start thinking about, the Indian and African dynamic, I can only imagine how when we start to begin to talk about identity, mm-hmm. how it kind of shaped you as a person. Mm-hmm. What would you say the influence that your African descent has had on your upbringing?
The influence that it had on me, and that's something that I notice now, like becoming a woman, is the struggle between masculine energy and feminine energy. Because, in Africa, the set is feminine. Women are catering to their husbands, to the male part of the community. So for me, that was a struggle for a while. You see what I'm saying? Being here and trying to be feminine, but also be masculine, because if I'm feminine, I feel like, oh, you're being taken advantage of, because that's how my mom was. Like, she would, cater to my dad. And I'm like, like, why? You know what I mean? So the difference between the two is trying to navigate that and also stay within that guidelines and trying to be me at the same time. And how can I put this? Trying to uphold my African heritage and also be me at the same time, and not feel like maybe I'm disappointing her and becoming, being bold, because women in Africa, you can't be really bold. You basically, like, in the background, you don't have a voice, essentially. It's not that you're not human. It's just that men are the front line of everything. So that was a struggle for me when trying to figure out who I am and also trying to appease my family.
It's funny because even though you're extremely feminine, one of the most feminine ladies I know, you're also pretty strong and powerful, because I constantly see you on my timeline running around with AK-47s.
Yeah.
And so how does it feel being a female working in a male-dominated industry, because you work in security?
Yeah. It actually feels good, but at the same time, it's a struggle. Because when I got in security like years ago when I had my second born. So I wasn't toting guns back then. So then I got into, just, regular security, which is like a community security where you're at the gate and stuff like that. So then one day I decided to change my career and go into more, I would say, commission, because you have non-commission and then you have a commission license. So I decided to get my commission license and I went to armor trucks, and that's where you carry guns. And that was also a male dominant industry. At the time, it can be a little intimidating because you're coming in and you're like, okay, I don't fit in as a woman. But at the same time, I wasn't trying to prove myself that, hey, I don't fit in as a woman. I just wanted to do the job, because I'm one of those people that want to try everything and see how it works for me. So when I left armor truck and I went to now what I do now where we actually have to train annually twice a year. So the struggle with that is because in the field that I'm in now, we do everything from vehicle assist, fire system. I'm talking about like fire department and all that kind of stuff, and medical. And those are also all male dominant industry. If you go from EMS to firefighters to, just doing training in general with weapons, you see more men than you see women. Right. So for me, the struggle is trying to be feminine and ask for help when need be, But at the same time, since we all work together, I'm like, no, I don't need the help. In terms of being an African Indian woman, it does kind of hinder you a little bit when it comes to asking for help, because in the culture that I come from, women they don't have a voice. You're basically behind the scene. You're birthing children. You're taking care of your husband and your family, and that's what it is. So for me, stepping into that role and wanting to know everything and wanting to better myself and wanting to innovate who I am as a person and trying to find out my identity, it was kind of hard trying to ask for help, especially asking another man for help. When in my culture, you really can't do that because you don't have a voice. But the struggle also comes in is because you feel like they look at you different. You know, one, you're Black. Two, you're a female. So now you have to prove yourself constantly. Otherwise, they're going to be like, because when I first went in, I couldn't shoot a bullseye if my life depended on it. Now, because I take the time to train all the time, and that's the reason why you always see me running around with rifles and, AK-47s. Well, we don't use those, but, we use rifles and 9mm and 40 and stuff like that. I couldn't shoot at first, but because I had to stop overthinking and asking for help, they started to pour into me more in terms of training. So now I can mostly probably outshoot most of them because of the fact that I don't limit myself. I ask questions and I ask for help. So it kind of helps me with the intimidation. When I first came in, I'm like, it's got pretty scary, but now you just go into stuff bold. You're not scared. You just go in, you ask for help, and then you just get better. You keep practicing and practicing. And before you know it, it's not going to matter if you're a female or male. You're all going to be on the same line. You see what I'm saying? So for me, that's how I overcame all of that.
What did you learn about yourself through that process?
What I learned about me through that whole process, because when I first went in, and we went for our first annual training and we started shooting, I was literally like all over the place. I couldn't shoot, like straight in the line. And I would feel like really insecure, and then I would always stay back. But then I just started asking for help, and I was like, hey, can you help me with this? What am I doing wrong? What's going on? And come to find out, it was just a small thing. My sighting was off. You see, because I was not gripping the way I was supposed to, and my sighting was off. And once I got that together, I started hitting the target the way it's intended to. So what I learned from that is that I used to limit myself by not asking questions, because if I asked the question, then they would laugh at me or think I'm stupid or, she don't know anything, or she's just a girl. But I had to overcome that. I had to open my mouth and ask the question.
Yeah, life is really all about being coachable, because I know last year I started going to gun classes myself, and that was my first time shooting a gun ever. Yeah. And when I was there, I knew guns were powerful, don't get me wrong.
I remember you telling me.
Yeah, but it's like a whole different thing when you actually got it in your hand and you shoot.
Yeah.
And like you said, it can be one small thing that makes the bullet go all the way off.
Yeah.
And so I know for me, I learned myself, hey, during that process, I was in a new environment and I had to humble myself and be like, I don't know anything.
Yes.
And I had to tell my coach, I'm like, yo, I don't feel comfortable. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but sometimes it's hard to see the picture when you're actually in the frame.
So want to be humble. We don't want to be humble. And that was the thing that I also had struggled with, is being humble and asking for help. And I don't take critique like really too well. And that's the reason why I wouldn't ask the question like, hey, what's going on with this? Or, why am I like shooting off? And humbleness for me was the hardest thing, especially being in that male dominant industry. It was hard for me to do that, because you have to literally be humble and be vulnerable enough to be able to ask for help.
Right. That's also why it's important to be around people that you trust, because I feel like even in relationships, in order to be vulnerable, you have to be with someone that you're committed to, that you can trust to even do that. And so as I started thinking about identity, I know, I went from being single to being married, and you went from being married when I first met you to being divorced. So I know that I can only imagine how it is being divorced because I haven't been divorced. But I know that had to be a certain turnaround point too within your personal self where you identified as married, now you identify as single. What did that process teach you, or how did you get through that?
What I learned from that process, I had to go back to understanding how did we get here. Because, divorce, they just don't happen. We don't wake up one day and be like, you know what? I don't want to be married anymore, because we choose the person that we're with. But for me, it was, one, I got married very young. So I was like 21 when I got married. I was married very, very young. And we're talking about identity. I didn't know who I was. So at that time in my life, I was basically trying to latch on to who would want me and accept me, and I didn't even know who I was. You see what I'm saying? So we started to have issues, and now I didn't know how to be a wife. That's another thing. And before you can get married, you have to know you have to know how to be a husband and a wife. And if you don't know that, and that comes from identity. And if you don't know these things, you can't really perform the task that God asked you to perform. So I couldn't do that. I couldn't deliver. So that led us to divorce. The way that I overcame the failure over my divorce is through prayer, and also accountability and accepting some of the things, the role that I played in my marriage ending, and also understanding that we were two different people, and I had to be okay with that we wanted different things, and I was not prepared. So these answers came later. It didn't come to me at the time after the divorce because it was still kind of fresh. It wasn't until I was like 25 or 26 is when I started to take accountability of the things that happened, and that the marriage failed because, one, we were two different people, and two, I was not willing to take accountability for the role that I played, and three, I didn't know who I was. So for me, I felt like it was a failure. I felt like I failed, and I was in denial for a while that it wasn't my fault, because, we always want to blame the other person. But it was very heartbreaking, and it was still, for me, it was just kind of like, oh, I didn't do anything wrong. So I moved on about my day like nothing happened. It's until later on when I turned, I believe, 25, I started taking accountability for why we got divorced. And that's because I was immature in the time. But it's not just all on me. It's both of us. When you decide to make that decision, both of you have to be ready for that. So that way you don't end up on a divorce line. So it was a struggle. It was confusing because you're trying to figure out, especially if you're not taking accountability, if you're not taking accountability, you tend to think that it's the other person's fault.
Right.
And you don't know why we got here. So I had to learn how to be a single mom. I had to learn how to operate, navigate life without him and everything else. And then you go on a downward spiral, and then you come back, and then you go down. And then it takes you through different emotions, and everybody's different. Everybody deals with divorce different. Some people start drinking. Some people feel like they can't live without that person anymore, and they commit suicide. And then you have people that just outright will never, ever do it again. So for me, I was more struggling with a failure. No one's going to want me, because there was a lot of things that were happening within that marriage that, would break most people. But I didn't allow it to break me. I just kind of took it as, hey, this is another baggage you have to carry, and you have to unpack it along the way as you go through life.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. And it's awesome that you say that, because I know since I've been knowing you for this long period of time, I feel like you used to really depend and want people, but now you're in kind of a different space in your life.
Yes.
So where are you at now?
Man. So I'm going to go back to how I got here. 6 years ago. So remember, when we were, coming up, I remember my son's grandmother, may God rest her soul, she said to me, Because you remember I was with Joe, and then, but I was always in a relationship, but I was always alone. That's another thing. You never saw me with my partner, fiance, boyfriend, or whatever. I was always by myself. And she said, yeah, you're in a relationship, but I always see you alone. So fast forwarding to that, 6.5 years ago, I was in a relationship, but it lasted only a year. And that's because we wanted two different things. We didn't believe in the same things. Our core value wasn't the same. Our thought process wasn't the same. So it hurt that I had to end the relationship because I was trying to hang on. Like, okay, he could change. I could change. I could change him. Maybe I can convince him, because I had that little piece of me that still wants to hang on to people and relationships that no longer serve me anymore. And when I decided to terminate the relationship and started the process journey of 6.5 years of just being by myself, you start to learn things. So one, I had to take a deep look at myself. So I had to start looking at decisions, choices that I was making, relationships that I was in. How did they all contribute, and how did I contribute to that? And when I started to notice that the part of me that was playing a role in that was coming from a broken childhood. You see what I'm saying? Acceptance. So my dad passed away when I was 4. So I didn't have a father figure in the home. So I started to look for these things, because some girls do that. They look for these things in relationships, the sense of belonging, the sense of, neediness, where someone want you and care for you. And they feel like, yeah, that's their whole world. So starting this journey of self-love is what I like to call it. One day I was trying to go to sleep and I couldn't, but I just kind of like stayed up, and I was like, all right. And then I remember someone said to me once, they said, when you can't go to sleep, God is trying to talk to you. And I was like, what is he trying to say? And so I started praying, and then I just asked him to take away, because you deal with loneliness, and that's how loneliness sometimes kind of invite the wrong things in, and then you confuse that for love, you confuse that for acceptance, you confuse that for belonging somewhere, but it's really not. We go back to identity again. You have to know who you are. So at that time, I still didn't know who I was. So I prayed about it, and then I just started dealing with the pain of being by myself, and started to tell myself that it's okay. And, just started occupying my time with different things, like going to the lake and, reading a book and going to the library. And also reminding myself of the things that he said when we were parting ways, is that because we were two different people, before we separated, I was just like, okay, I'm never going to be in this place again. Because I remember I didn't like that. So I started to pour into myself. It's hard at first, but over time it gets better, because when you start to fall in love with you, everything else kind of falls off. You start to put you first. And that's what I started doing. I started putting me first. I started journaling, working out, going to the gym. And that's when I started realizing that the person that I really needed in the first place was me. Because in order for you to love someone else, you have to give to yourself first. Because you can't be good for somebody else if you're not even good to yourself. And I had to do that. And I've been doing that for 6 years. And there's a lot of things I had to learn. I had to learn how to not be in relationships just because of the sake of having someone, and also deal with the behaviors and dealing with the things that sometimes when we get in relationships, we want our partners to accept. Right. That I wasn't willing to do. And my friends would tell me, they're like, well, some things you just got to accept. I don't. You see what I'm saying? Because I refuse, because I've done it for so long. Because remember, I was married. And then all those years I was in a relationship, and then it would end. And then I was in another one. So I never really took the time to spend time with me and really get to know who I am, what I like to do. And I'm a rebel. I'm feminine, but I'm also a rebel. If I feel like if I feel like you're going to stand in my way of my goals, you will be removed. And that's it. Now, after 6 years, I am very, 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 I stand on business with that one.
One thing you have to learn is that not everyone who started with you is meant to finish with you. And that's a tough reality to learn, especially when you've invested time, energy, and even love into certain relationships. But holding on to toxic connections out of guilt, history, or comfort only slows you down. Just because someone has been with you your entire life or for years doesn't mean they're meant to be in your next season. Growth requires pruning, removing what no longer serves you so that something better can take root. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your growth is to create space. Space for healthier connections, space for peace, space to fully step into your purpose. That doesn't mean that you have to cut people off with bitterness or resentment. It simply means making a conscious decision to protect your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. When a relationship starts costing you more than it contributes, it's time to reevaluate. Letting go isn't an act of hate. It's an act of love. Love for yourself, love for your future, love for the person that you are becoming. And when you start making space for the right people, you'll realize that losing the wrong ones was never really a loss. It was a necessary shift.
Yeah, because I have goals, a set of goals that I'm trying to get to. And I feel like if that person is not aligning with that and they're going to stand in my way or they're going to become a distraction, they get removed because of that.
Period.
Yeah. Period.
So throughout all of that, I know one of the things that we've talked about too is therapy. What role did therapy play in this?
Oh, man. So therapy played a role in 3 ways. You know, Christopher got sick.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, Christopher got sick. I want to say 6 years ago now, which is kind of weird. Christopher was diagnosed with cancer on Mother's Day.
Christopher is her son.
Yeah, Christopher, my 18-year-old. So he was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 10. And at the age of, 11. I'm sorry, 11. He was diagnosed with cancer. And at the time, we didn't know that that's what it was. So after a lot of testing and all these things, we found out that he had a brain tumor and he also had a spinal cancer. So his case was taken by St. Jude and we had to navigate with that and deal with everything. And the whole time being a mom, this is where things like this kind of test your gangster a little bit, because now you got a choice in between. Do I buckle down and cry and why me and all of that? I didn't even do that. I just immediately went into superwoman mode and to be there for my son because I didn't want him to see that, okay, this is because it's scary already, but he doesn't know that because he's young. You see what I'm saying? But I knew how that was going to affect me because his aunt, she passed away from cancer, from breast cancer. So for me, that word was not sitting well with me. So I had to become that tough woman for him in order for him to not see me break. And by the time it's all said and done, he went through chemo and he's doing good now. He came home and they told me that he's going to have to go to therapy, in order to navigate about what happened. So we signed up for that, but it turns out that I'm the one that needed therapy because I didn't have time to process what happened to him, right? Because I was in mama mode the whole time and putting my feelings to the side and just dealing with it. And it comes to find out that I'm the one that needed therapy. I had to deal with that. So going to therapy and dealing with that, I also started to do self-discovery while I was in therapy because we talk about relationship, childhood and stuff. So I remember my therapist asking me about relationships and why do they not work. So I would say little things like, I don't like stuff on a nightstand, okay? I'm an OCD, like everything has to be where it's at. Everything has to have a place. Right. So she said, is it that you don't like stuff on a nightstand or is it that you don't like the person that you're with? And that was a good question for me because it's like when we meet people, do we actually like them or we're just like the idea of them, and then we get in a relationship. And I think that's what I was doing. I was getting in a relationship because, hey, if you got the good features, we're good. Because again, I don't know who I am. So, I need you to help me know who I am. And that's how I was going to these relationships. So 6 years of therapy, I started to find out more that I lacked boundaries, that I lacked self-love, that I lacked, patience with myself and not allowing myself to work through these things in timely fashion. I was just kind of jumping from one thing to another and not really seeing if this works or that doesn't work. So therapy helped a lot because, one, therapy is a mirror that get held up to your face, and now you have to stand there for 10, 15 minutes and stare at yourself, and you have to fall in love with everything that's about you, whether it's good or the bad, and the things that you need to work out, things that you need to change about yourself.
Right.
And that is how self-development for me kind of born out of that.
Yeah.
Because I still go to therapy now.
Yeah, now that's good. And like you were saying earlier, I think accountability is power. And accountability, just keep it real with you.
Yeah.
And let you know, hey, these are the things you need to work on, but it takes love for somebody to hold you accountable as well.
Yeah.
It just really does. Yeah, I know when you were going through the process with Chris and the counsel situation, I had to give it to y'all. Y'all did everything that needed to be done. Y'all kept God at the center. What part did God play in this? Because we know that I know it was a lot. So it was easy to doubt. It was easy to do all of those things. But what part did God play in this?
When I think about what God played in this, I think about that story of Abraham. I believe was he the one that took his son up and put him as a sacrifice? And that's what that was for me, is because when his dad called me and said that his case have to be taken in Memphis, Tennessee, I was like, no, he has to stay here with me because I want to make sure that he's good. But his dad, I give it to him, he's a praying man. He's always been in the Bible, and he's always been prayerful, and he's always been humble to God to do what God asked him to do. And that's what God told him to do, that Christopher had a better chance in Memphis than here in Dallas. And that's where we went. And I had to give that over to God, and I had to pray. But at the same time, I was ready, but not ready. Because I remember telling him, I'm like, okay, this is it. If something happens, you might as well just, put me in a crazy house or whatever, because Christopher's my baby,
Right.
And through a lot of prayer. So for us, it was kind of like Abraham sacrificing his son because he didn't know what's going to happen. He's like, hey, this is what I have. So for us, it was the faith of not seeing what's on the other side of it, and just have to keep trusting and keep praying and still do your part, deliver the work. Because the doctors told us, when we asked them what stage is it at, they told us we don't go by stages. Because if you go by stages, you focus on that versus focusing on what you need to do now to make sure that your child lives and goes to the other side. And that's just how it is with God. It's like we have to trust the process and not know what's on the other side, because if we know what's on the other side, either we're going to rush through it or we're going to mess it up. And for us, we had to stay prayerful, and we had to be humble, and we had to just believe, because you don't know what's on the other side.
I want to take a moment and acknowledge that this episode discusses sensitive topics, including self-harm. If you're struggling with thoughts of self-harm or feel overwhelmed, please know that you are not alone. There is hope and there is help. I encourage you to reach out to someone you trust and seek support. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please call or text 988, the Crisis Lifeline. They offer free confidential support 24/7. You matter, your life is valuable, and there are people who care and want to help you get through this.
Right. What stopped you from just being doubtful and just saying, you know what, let me just go crazy?
20 years ago, I tried to commit suicide. And looking back at it now, I'm like, God had brought me, because I could have died that day, because I only had 2 minutes. If the officer hadn't done what he did, 2 minutes was all I had. You see what I'm saying? So when I woke up 2 weeks later, not knowing what happened, to me, that was the foundation that started then for me that, hey, there is a purpose for you. So for this entire duration time of Christopher being sick, I thought about all of the things that I've been through, where God brought me from, and I knew there was a God, so I believed in that I knew he was going to see us past this, that wasn't the end. There was no way he was going to bring us this far and then just terminate everything. You see what I'm saying? So for me, God has always been the core of everything that I do. So when there's a slight doubt that comes in, I always look back at 20 years ago when I try to end my life, and then I'm here. You see what I'm saying? So for me, that's always going to be the foundation of anything that I'm going to do. I'm like, you know what, God, we got this, you know? So, and that's just what it is. It's faith that's not seen. And you just, you know, because we all go through stuff, you know, and we get here some kind of way. And then if God is at the center of everything that you do, you just look back and you really have no words, but you know. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Because God doesn't require words.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, it's like he knows how you feel and he knows what you're thinking, and he's just there with you throughout that process. And even now, looking back, I feel like some people that may have been in a similar situation may feel a sense of guilt or something like that. What has stopped guilt from being able to take over your life?
Guilt in terms of
even being in that situation to where you would want to do that.
The guilt for me was thinking that I was God. You see what I'm saying? Because he gives life and he takes life. And for me, is that I thought that I had it so bad that, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. And playing God and saying, okay, I'm in control of my life and I get to do the same thing. And so I struggle with that sometimes, but at the same time, I don't struggle with it because I know it's a story for someone else.
Right.
And I tell myself the situation that I was in, that's another reason to why the self-development was born 6.5 years ago, is because I remembered that day, why that happened. It was because of a relationship, and it was because of things that were said to me, and it was because I didn't feel accepted. I didn't feel loved. And I thought, okay, you know what? The world is over. I'm going to do this. And then nobody would worry about it. So I still feel that when I look at the scar sometimes, and I'll be like, what were you thinking? You see what I'm saying? But then I look back at it at the same time, and I remember God was there to make sure that the officer arrived on time, that the doctors did everything that they could do. I even woke up in the surgery room and wanted to stop the operation, but they had to keep going because I just felt like, you know what, it's over. I don't want to do this anymore. You know what I'm saying? Because we sometimes feel like life is just so hard and it's never going to get better.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right. So what I want to do is I want to take a break real quick, and I want us to play a game. The game that we came up with for this episode is called Who Are You Really? So the producer put a lot of different questions within this particular jar. So what we're going to do is we're going to take turns asking each other these questions. I'll go first, and then we'll ask each other 2 questions. So the question that I pulled for you is, what's something you've always wanted to explore about yourself but haven't yet?
Skydiving.
Really?
I am so afraid of heights. And I remember that clip from Will Smith when he was saying everything gets so exciting and you're like at the edge and you're excited, you think you're going to do it. And then you're like, nah. And because remember when we used to go to like roller coasters, I would hate, I don't do them. Because I'm like, my heart jumps and I'm getting old. So I'm like, yeah, this heart is not going to withstand, even though I'm healthy, but I'm like, my heart is not going to. So skydiving for me is like, it's on my bucket list at the bottom because I want to overcome that fear of height, but also I know it does something to you. It liberates you in a way where you feel like, oh, you remember when we went, what was it?
I can't think.
Skydive.
What's the thing through the trees?
Yeah.
Zip lining.
Zip lining. And you said, and you were like balancing on it. You're like, it changes your whole mindset. And I'm like, I don't think so. I was not going to do it. I mean, how do you balance yourself on that one rope? Like, no. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I know skydiving is definitely on my bucket list.
Yeah.
I want to do it within like the next 3 years. Honestly, the only reason why I hadn't done it before is because I was too heavy to do it. Because, like literally, like you can't be over 250 pounds. I believe it on the ones that I was looking at, and I weigh more than 250 pounds. And so I had to lose weight. And also that's actually one of my, now I am under 250, but that was one of my main motivating factors for losing weight is so I could do more of those things.
They have a indoor skydiving.
I saw it, but I'm like, that's trying to say. Like, I want to jump out of a plane. Like, not air coming from the ground. Yeah. So I'll say within the next 3 years, you should come with me and Jillian when we go skydiving and we can all do it together.
Oh my God. I think I'm gonna.
Do you?
No! Come on! We are not.
We got that. I said we're gonna do it. Okay, pull a question for me. I'm scared.
You should be. Oh. All right. If you could give your younger self one piece of advice, identity, what would it be? One piece of advice about identity, what would it be?
I should have read these questions before we put it in, so I never answered. But one piece of advice. To just be myself. Not to, but to be honest with you, I've always kind of been myself and not really worried about other people. Just continue to listen to God and let him lead you, and he will continue to lead you in the right direction. Yeah. So it doesn't matter, because I'm personally an ambitious person, and I feel like I'm also a creative. And so with being ambitious and being a creative, I can come up with all of these great ideas. Yes. And sometimes I feel like some of the ideas that I came up with, I thought that God gave them to me. And now looking back at it, I realized that God didn't give me those ideas. He just blessed me within my being to be creative. And I came up with those. Yes. And so I would say just to seek God more so that way I can muffle out what I feel is God speaking versus me speaking to myself. Yeah. That's actually a good one, because I need that, because sometimes I like sit there, like I just said, I drink coffee and then I get all these ideas all through my head and I'm like, oh, but with, me trying to do certain things, I've been talking to God for the past couple of days about, okay, I need you at the center of this and I need you at the center of this. And then I'm starting to noticing things are falling in line of what I'm asking for. And, and I'm like, if this is you, let it keep going. And then, you basically directing the path. So that's a good. And that's what I've learned too. It's like everything that's supposed to happen, in your life, it's going to line up with God's will. And so when you start just listening to God and start doing things and making sure that God is in the center, everything else around you will just begin to take shape the way it is. Some people fall off, some people will slip, but you just got to trust God in the process, because you're being who he calls you to be in the process. Okay, here we go. The next question for you. What's the one memory from your childhood that shaped your identity? Music. Music in our house was like the thing. So my dad used to be a singer as well. So then I thought that, I could sing. But according to my best friend, I cannot hit the Whitney Houston chords. No, not the Whitney Houstons. So music for us, it was a big thing with my mom and my dad. That's one thing that they had in common when it came to music. So, him bringing an instrument in the house. So music has always been when I'm feeling sad, when I'm feeling happy, when I'm cleaning. When on the way here, I was listening to Eminem, I'm Not Afraid, because I was nervous. And then I had a shot of espresso. And then I was like, yeah, we're going to crush this podcast. So, yeah, music for me, because music caters to all of the emotions that you have. And I feel like sometimes emotions has to do with identity. Yeah. Kind of like, they're like brothers and sisters, but emotions is behind the identity, because some people don't even show emotions when they're upset, and they keep cool, calm, and collected the entire time. Right. When I think about you and think about music, I know one of the ways in which you express yourself is through dance. Yeah. So tell us how you got started in dance, and kind of why do you feel like God has placed you there? So when I was 17,
when I had my second son, and his father, mom, I was staying with them because I was pregnant with my second son. And because me and my mom didn't have really a good relationship, so she took me in. So she became like a mother to me. So in her house, you know, you ever see that sign that says, "In this house we serve the Lord"?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the sign that she had in the hallway. And when I moved in, that was the first thing that she said to me as soon as that baby dropped. You know, because I went to church every day. She'll wake me up. There was no sleeping on Sunday. There's no sleeping in. You're getting up and you're going to church. So she'd take me to church, and I would see these girls dancing. So then one day, after Sean was born and he was able to, I think he was like 1, and she took me to church and she dropped me off. She was like, "I don't care what." I used to usher when I was pregnant. Okay. I wasn't the young adult usher with a belly standing at the door handing out flyers and, you know, doing all that. So when Sean was born, she took me to church. She was like, "I don't care what you do. You're going to have to pick something." So at the time, they had a Christmas cantata that was coming up. So all the girls in the church decided that we're all going to get together and put, you know, a dance together. And Adrienne McCoy was our teacher. So she put a group of us together, and that was, I didn't know back then that was the birth of what I'm doing now. So I remember it was a bunch of people, and we were dancing to the choir. It wasn't like the music actually playing. The choir was singing the song that we were dancing to, and we crushed it. And from that moment on, I just fell in love with it. And I just kept on practicing, because at that time, I didn't know how to choreograph anything. I knew I loved the music, but I didn't know how to choreograph it. So I would watch like a lot of videos, and then I would practice, and I would mimic what the girls are doing and stuff like that. So then here we are. I don't even know how, since I was 17. I hate math, so I don't.
It's been a nice little minute.
Yes, it's been a nice little minute. And then I just started doing it more. And then every time that I would do it, I would feel so liberated and so happy and so free when I would dance. And I remember sometimes I would have breakthroughs, because depending on what song I choose, sometimes God would speak through them, and it manifested in a way that I just didn't understand what was happening. And it happened a couple of times, and that's when I started realizing that, hey, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, because I can't get up and preach like you can, or, you know, Papa can, or anything like that. But through dance, I didn't understand that was a ministry within itself, except you're communicating to God your pain, your happiness, your excitement through movement of the limbs and your body and stuff like that, and expressions for me.
The one thing that shifts me closer to my purpose is crafting experiences that bring ideas to life through design. Whether it's curating an event, or building a brand, or mapping out a new concept, I thrive in the process of turning visions into reality. There's something powerful about creating spaces, physical or digital, that inspires, connects, and transforms people. That's when I know I'm walking in my purpose. And I believe that everyone has that thing, that hobby, that passion, or activity that naturally pulls them towards their calling. If you haven't found yours yet, start paying attention to what excites you, what challenges you in a good way, and what makes you lose track of time. Lean into it, explore it, and let it guide you, because your purpose isn't something that you have to chase. It's something you uncover in the things that already set your soul on fire.
Absolutely. And I know for you here recently, where we're talking about identity and transitions, one of the things that I've learned about identity is dynamic. It's not static. Like, it constantly changes over time. I know you kind of just came off a hiatus from dancing because you had some a medical situation that you had to address. And I know I got permission from you to talk about this before we came on here. But I know recently you just also had a hysterectomy. Can you kind of give us a little of the emotions that came from that? Because I know some of the conversations that we had, it was, you know, I feel like I'm an empathetic person, but as I was hearing you talk about it, I'm like, wow, I hadn't thought about it that way. So how did the hysterectomy for you kind of make a shift in your identity and just kind of put you in an in-between space for a second?
So the way I kind of got into this point where I had to have a hysterectomy, because for the longest time that I could remember, as African American women, we suffer from fibroids a lot. Regardless if you have them removed, they always come back. And I don't understand why it's like that. I try to read up on it to kind of like understand where it comes from. They don't have any diagnosis for it right now to why it does happen. So for me, it was a lot of dealing with a lot of pain every month. And then it was just kind of like to the point where some days I couldn't even get out of bed. And then also what comes with that is a lot of emotions. I didn't understand why I would like lash out and get angry. And I was like, okay, I know I got anger issues, but not to this point where it's just, I don't want to deal with people around that time, and then I'm sleeping a lot. And, I was also irregular, which I didn't understand that either. So when I started to go to the doctor and try to figure out what's going on, they would do like a simple procedure, like what they call is a fibroid ablation, where they remove them, but then they would come back. So I did that literally a year apart, and it came right back, where this time it just comes back a lot different than before. And, bigger in size and more painful. And I just couldn't deal with that anymore. So then he told me we can do it again, but we're just going to keep being here. And I just kind of got tired of being cut up on. And then I also got tired of the emotional roller coaster that I was going through. And I didn't understand why. Like one day I was depressed, then I'm not, and then I'm okay. And it goes up and down. And I was just like, I couldn't do it. So being at my age now, I don't want to have any more children. So that was the factor that decided that for me, where I had to think about, if I meet someone, would they want to have kids?
Right.
I don't want to have any kids. So it's like, how does that play? So I put that on the back burner. So then when I talked to my doctor about it, that was the option that came up. So I was very nervous because I'm not a good surgery. I don't deal with surgery well. There's always complications that happen, on the table and stuff like that. So that was my first concern. My second concern is, how would I feel as a woman after it happens? Because I was reading up all these articles, all these things would change about you. You would feel less of a woman. And then, of course, I was listening to other women testimonies that have been through it. And they say, oh, you're going to feel like this and you're going to feel like that. So I was kind of nervous. So going into the surgery, having all this stuff in my mind, my blood pressure ended up dropping while I was on the table. So then the surgery became complicated, where it took longer than it should have. So after it happened, I go through a recovery and all of that. Coming out of that, you feel lonely because you're by yourself. You don't want to deal with people because, one, you deal with what people already said. You're going to feel less of a woman. So the shame comes in. And I didn't even tell a lot of people that I was doing that because I didn't want the negative, advice that people try to give you. Because exactly. So I was feeling lonely at first. And then I started to feel a lot better. I went from being angry. I remember being angry all the time to feeling a lot more happier. I was more excited. My body felt a lot different. Like I felt like I can just get up and go work out and go do this and do that. Because with having that issue, you literally have no quality of life. You can't work out. You can't sleep comfortably. You can't do things that your quality of life basically goes down because of that. So once that happened for me, my quality of life, when I work out, I go for walks, I'm not tired as much, I'm not moody, I'm not grumpy, I'm more motivated, I'm more excited, I'm more happy. And then now that kind of boosts the whole self-innovation thing that comes out, where I'm more creative now, because there's nothing, I'm not saying that's the answer for every woman that has these issues. I'm just saying that's what worked for me. You see what I'm saying? And I had to do what was best for me and my body after having a discussion with the doctor. Of course, you can explore it more, but you have to do what's best for you. And that for me was, I didn't want to have any more children. So.
Yeah, because I remember a conversation that we had. You was like, I don't want any more, but like you said, but what if I do? And just really making that decision.
Yeah, exactly.
I know that was tough, but then right after that, I remember we found out that your sons was expecting, and now you're getting ready to bring your first grandchild into the world. And so now your grandchild is here. So now your identity has transitioned again. So how do you feel now being a grandmother?
You know, when I had my babies, you know, when you see your child for the first time, you fall in love, and it's like, that's what it is. And then they got older and they started having their own identity. And that's something that I struggle with, because it's kind of weird seeing the little human that you gave birth to now is setting their own boundaries and telling you what they are and telling you what they want and what they don't want. So seeing my grandbaby when I first found out about it, it was a shocker. It didn't settle. I was, like, what? I'm too young to be a grandmother. But I had a conversation with God sitting on my couch. And I remember this like it was yesterday. I said, because when we get older, we think that we have, more birthdays behind us and less in front of us.
Right.
But for me, so it was that moment. So I prayed to God, and I was like, God, I want to see my grandbaby. I want to see them graduate high school and get married and all that. So a week later, I get a phone call from my son when I'm at work, and he tells me we need to talk. And I'm like, what do we need to talk about? And that's when he told me that, his girlfriend was pregnant. And I was elated. I was happy. But at the same time, I was anticipating like the arrival of the baby. And then, so he's here. And when I held him for the first time, it was just this. I know people think it's weird when you say you falling in love all over again. That's literally what happened, because I was holding someone that was coming from someone that I made, and now I'm like looking at his dad all over again. And it kind of gave me that sense of
serenity,
peace and serenity with having the hysterectomy, that now I get to love on a little baby that's my grandbaby. And it's just, I'm happy. Like, I couldn't ask for anything more. I just feel like my life is full. I'm happy. I'm excited. I'm at peace, because, when we were there, I was just telling your wife a minute ago, I was like, it feels so good, holding him. And he's just so peaceful. He's not cranky. He's not mad, because babies feel energy.
Right.
And if you're cranky and you're not right in the spirit, they can feel that and they can react to it. But he was peace. And that's when I knew that I was at peace with where I'm at and how I am and who I am now.
Yeah. So. And I can just tell and see the serenity all over you.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about what you're doing now with Serenity. I know you got a podcast coming out soon. You've been, ever since I've known you, you loved cameras, and now you're going around shooting photographs of people. So tell us a little bit more about what you're doing right now within the businesses that you are starting and how people can contact you.
So right now, Serenity Photo Studio actually was birthed at midnight. And the way I started photography, because a lot of people don't know, because they're like, did you just like pick up a camera and just decided to? So when Christopher got sick, I wanted to document his journey, going through cancer and doing all of these things and being in the hospitals and stuff like that, even though I got kicked out a couple of times, because they call me paparazzi. I felt really good. I felt really good about that. But I wanted to document. So in case if I'm gone, he knows that mom was there for all of it. You see what I'm saying? Because he has proof that that's what I did. So then I started to post some of these photos, and people liked it. And then I got my first gig from one of my coworkers. He actually works for the Secret Service now, because that was one of the pictures that I did for his profile, for his Indeed and not Indeed, LinkedIn. Yeah. So, that was my first gig. So after that, I just started doing it. And then I didn't have a name. I just named it Manuela's Photography for a while. And then I was sitting on the phone talking to one of my friends, and I'm like typing and just writing a business plan for it. And I was like, what should I call it? And he was like, why did you start photography in the first place? And then I thought about Christopher, and I thought about my emotion at that time when I was going through that, and calmness was what it was for me. I was calm the entire time. And that's how Serenity came about. And then he was like, Serenity Photo Studio. And I'm like, but I don't have a studio. He was like, you're the studio. The reason why he said that is because anytime I come into contact with my clients, I make them feel comfortable in their own skin, and they can feel comfortable in front of the lens, and they don't have to feel that they have to be uptight or they have to pose a certain way. I make them feel comfortable. I make it playful. I make it fun, where they can just be themselves and be vulnerable and just have fun with what they're doing, and basically try to communicate what they're trying to communicate in a picture, because a picture says 1,000 words.
It does.
So we named it Serenity Photo Studio. So now what I'm doing with that is that nope.
I'm breaking my step already.
I know, right?
But tell us more about how can these people contact you in Serenity?
They can contact me through Instagram, Serenity Photo Studio, or they can contact me via Facebook, Princess Smith. So yeah, that's how they can contact me. Or they can find me on Facebook.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate you just being honest and transparent, because I know you put a lot of your business out here today.
I did.
And so we appreciate it. And hopefully somebody that is watching this is able to take something from it where you can implement some change in your life and start innovating your life today. Have a good one. We'll see you all next time.